Hello? Hello?
What do you want?
Yes, I am a Airstream Renovator, and I have come on a quest in search of the holy R-value.
Huh? I do not know what you are talking about.
Yes, it is the holy R-value. It is something that all Airstream Renovators have been searching for, and I've been told that it's here.
Oh, that holy R value. Yes, we have one in here. I told him we had it when clearly we have no R value.
Well, then I demand you give it to me now.
No, you cannot have it, you stinky Airstream Renovator. Your mother was a hamster and your father smelled of elderberries. Now go away or I shall taunt you a second time.
Okay, well, never mind then.
What is going on, everybody? It is Ian here with Miller Garage, and as you can see, I am inside of this completely empty Airstream. And so today we are going to be talking about insulation. And this is probably one of the more controversial topics within Airstreams, and I say that kind of in jest. It's not gonna start wars or anything, but there's a lot of different opinions, and so I'm going to give my opinion. I base this off of a lot of different factors. One is, what we use with our builds. The other is, which is tied to that, in the research that I've done, looking into various different products. Also, what makes sense from a time and feasibility standpoint, because some things, maybe take a lot more time, effort, etc., to get certain results that maybe aren't worth it. So we're going to basically put insulation in three different categories. We're going to have the good, the bad, and the maybes. Because there are some that kind of fall in that, they're not ideal, but they're not terrible sort of range. So we're going to go over all those. So the very first thing is I want to just define R-value. So R-value is a measurement of how well a material resists heat flow. It is a rating system used to evaluate the insulating properties of a material or insulation product. So it basically is, how much change in temperature that happens from, one side to the other side of the insulating material. Relatively straightforward. So as you can imagine, things like thickness, direct sun, indirect sun, all of that do play a bit of a part in all of this. And again, we're not going to get crazy scientific. We're just going to go off of stated, R-value numbers. Some of them are application specific, but for the most part, we're going to kind of keep it there and not get too much into the weeds on physics, because I don't know much of that. All right, so we're going to start with the bad. All right, so I brought part of my costume from the entry. So this is Reflectix, and I've actually seen it used quite a bit, whether on YouTube, Instagram, all of that. I have pulled it out of several trailers, probably, honestly, more than I would like to even imagine. In my opinion, this is probably about the worst possible thing you could try to insulate your Airstream with. Okay, so on their website, there is a part that is airspace requirements for metal building applications. I picked that because that is kind of the closest to what we got going on here. This is a metal building, essentially. And so we are going to look at what they recommend as well as what the R values are. So one thing that I'm just going to put out right off the bat, Reflectix themselves, this product is intended to be used with an air gap, and not just any air gap. It is a sealed air gap. So that is the first thing, and that is huge, because if the air can move on either side of the Reflectix, it's not doing its job. So it has to be a sealed air gap, no airflow, totally sealed. So that's challenge number one, is unless you're gonna put it on the other side of the ribs or any of that kind of stuff, it's not really gonna do much. And at just in its normal state, it is rated at an R1.1. So just a sheet of that, if it was, you know, completely covering the aluminum skin without any break in it, you're looking at an R1.1. That's the best you're gonna get out of it. Okay, so we're looking at this. So application roof, new, with thermal breaks and without thermal breaks. So basically that means, is there something isolating the roof from both the Reflectix and the rest of the building? So there needs to be like a rubberized something isolating the roof, because metal roofs and metal Airstreams conduct heat. So best case scenario, with an inch gap above and below, you are looking at an R9.2 down. So if you have, you know, roof, 1 inch gap, Reflectix 1 inch gap, and it's totally sealed, two completely sealed air gap, you know, where there's no movement of air, it can't go anywhere. You're looking at an R9.2, which is pretty good, but a big part of that is it's air. Air is an incredibly efficient insulator. So you have 2 inches of air gap that's sealed, that's creating that. So then without the thermal break, you're looking at a 7.6. So you see that there's a good bit lost with a lack of thermal break. You know, there's quite a few. They talked about like the walls and the gaps there and all that kind of stuff. And so the best that you can achieve with like a 9 inch air gap is R11. So as you can see, you're not really going to be, because I've literally seen people say that Reflectix, it's R20. I read a post of a trailer for sale, and they said that they had put 2 layers of Reflectix, so it was an R40 insulation value. That is not how it works. And Reflectix even says like putting 2 layers does nothing. So it's all about the air gap with Reflectix. It is a thermal isolator. It is not an insulator in and of itself. And its effectiveness is multiplied whenever you have like an air gap, Reflectix, air gap, and then like another insulator like fiberglass or whatever. And you know, obviously with an Airstream, you can't do that. You can't accomplish that. So I do not recommend it. You're wasting your money. You're losing any sort of efficiency. With all that being said, I will say that the battle to insulate an Airstream is in a lot of ways like won and lost in just the construction of it. You know, an all aluminum structure in and of itself is not going to be very good at keeping heat in and out. And then you have the windows, and like a single pane window presents an R value of 1. Again, you're gonna have a lot of heat coming in and out. So big things you can do there is you can tint them. There are the dual pane windows. They're a huge pain in the butt to deal with. And you know, I'm getting to the point where I'm not even necessarily rebuilding them as dual panes, because tint can do a lot. So I do recommend tint. That's gonna help you immensely. If you're not tinting your windows, then you're losing a lot right there. Okay, so that brings us to our bad insulation number 2, and that is fiberglass. So fiberglass bats have a R value of about 2.2 to 4.2 per inch. A lot of times that's how like bats are rated, is per inch. And so so in an Airstream you have about 1.5 to 1 3/4 inch space, kind of depending on your year. And so basically you're going to be able to get anywhere from 3 to maybe 6 R value there. So from an R value standpoint, it's not terrible. You know, that's regardless with anything where it's really hard to get above R6. It's going to be challenging to really get a true R6 with fiberglass in one of these because it you know, the compression on it and all that kind of stuff. Some of the other things, obviously, one of my big aversions to fiberglass is it is awful to work with. Like, it will destroy your lungs. You know, when those fiberglass particles get in your lungs, it does not come out. and they're finding that it is, you know, almost to the level of asbestos, and it may become, you know, on that level when it comes to containment and disposal is the same level of asbestos because of the damage it does to your lungs. So mainly for that reason alone, I will not work with it. I mean, whenever we have to pull it out of a trailer, I put a mask and a full suit on because I just don't want to have anything to do with it because it's so terrible for you. Additionally, it's not as easy to work with because, you know, if you've ever messed with it, it's in specific, you know, sizes, so cutting it down, you have to use scissors, and it's really difficult to cut, and it's abrasive and all these things, and it's just not fun to work with. I just won't do it. So without much more, that's pretty much it. I think fiberglass is a terrible idea for Airstreams. Do not recommend it. So that's definitely a burn. Okay, so now we're gonna dive into the maybes. These are the ones that, you know, depending on application, depending on use, and depending on your, you know, your patience level, we'll say that, these could be a good option. So the first maybe is sheep's wool. So like Havelock sheep's wool. The benefits are that it actually is a really good insulator. So it has an R value of 3.6 per inch. So that's pretty good. So ultimately you can be getting around, you know, 5.5 in an Airstream. Some of the benefits are, obviously, it is all natural. It does not have any, you know, VOCs, any of those kind of things. Obviously, the fiberglass issue, not there. You know, you could potentially be allergic to it. It is somewhat, it can tickle your nose whenever you're working with it. And I know that I was sneezing a good bit whenever we did an install with it. So even a dust mask is not a bad idea. It does give a very earthy farm smell to the trailer, so, you know, that could be a good or bad depending. You know, some people really may not like that, and I will say it is there. You will definitely smell it. And some of the benefits are that it is, it's very moisture wicking. Wool is really good about that, so any water that gets in there, it's not gonna like soak up and stain it, it's gonna run out. And bugs don't like it. Bugs and critters do not like it at all. Fiberglass is not such an issue. I don't know how many trailers we pulled apart that there were like massive rat's nests built into the fiberglass. So yeah, but they do not like that sheep's wool. Now, some of the downsides of it are it is relatively expensive. It's probably one of the more expensive of the options here. It is also quite a lot more work to actually work with it and install it. The biggest problem that I had when dealing with it, and kind of the thing that was like, I really don't want to use this unless somebody specifically wants it, is that when you put it in the wall and then you're like drilling to rivet, the sheep wool fibers are very strong, and they would constantly be getting wound up in the drill bit. And so it really kind of boiled down to the best way to do it would be to like drill all the holes, get all of your skins set in place with Clecos, and then pull it all back down, put the insulation up, and then just put Cleco the stuff back up and just rivet and not drill from that point. Obviously that's quite a bit more work. I mean, again, like if we were to do it for somebody, there wouldn't be that extra cost associated with having to do that, because otherwise, like, whenever you're drilling, it's just winding it all up, and it actually causes the skin to like bulge out because it binds up into like this big hurricane looking ball of sheep's wool. And so that's really kind of the big negative of it. If it wasn't for that, I mean, honestly, this stuff's great. It's a little hard to work with. You got to cut it with scissors, and like pretty heavy duty scissors, because again, it's sheep's wool. You know, they have those big old shears that they use on them. So, you know, there's definitely some downsides. That's why it's in the maybe category. All right, and the second maybe is spray foam. So that's another one that, you know, a lot of people ask about, a lot of people have used, and I have not actually, you know, done the spray the spraying it in part, but we had a trailer brought to us that already had all the spray foam. and we had to put skins up in. And from an R value standpoint, it is really good. So closed cell spray foam, there's a difference because there's like the rattle can spray foams. It's like, I think, an open cell, and then you have closed cell, which has to be professionally sprayed in by a company that does it. That stuff has an R value of 6 to 7 per inch. So in an Airstream, you could effectively be getting close to R10 in the walls, which is, admittedly really good. And if that is something that like you want to tackle all of the kind of the downsides of it, it's one of those things where I'm like, it definitely could pay off. It kind of depends on, what your intent is with it and how much time you have. For us, it really doesn't make sense, and I'll kind of go through the negatives of it. Number one is the cost. It is very expensive. Usually you have to have it professionally installed, so it's going to take, more time, more money, all of that. You have to do a lot of prep work. You have to make sure the shell's clean, all wiped down with, usually like acetone or something like that. And then you have to mask everything off. You have to have it sprayed in. And then once it's in there, it's not going to be perfectly just smooth. So a lot of times there's a lot of work, smoothing it all out to where the skins fit without a bunch of bumps and bulges in it. Sanding it can work really well. Whenever I was doing it, it was, to be honest, so poorly sprayed in that there was like these huge bulges coming out. So I was using like a razor knife to try to cut it off, and it was a nightmare. I did not like it. And then the second thing that happened is there was some wiring things that needed to be fixed. And the wiring, I would say, most of the time the way people do it is they run all the wiring and then they spray it in. You can do it the other way around, but then you're having to like cut wire pass through it and all that stuff. To be honest, that's probably like the better way to go about it, because then you're not gluing all your wiring in there, because if you have to change anything, fix anything, do anything with the wiring ever, which you probably will, it's glued now into this whole mess of spray foam. So that was some of the big versions for me with it. The other thing is, if God forbid you ever have anything happen to one of the panels and you have to do a panel repair, you have to deal with all that. So that basically means you have to like pull the panel off. You have to, remove all of the excess stuff, because it's on the outside sheet, obviously. It's not gonna be on the skin. So you pull the piece off and you gotta, deal with cleaning it all out, and then you have to reapply spray foam again if you want to do that, and then put the new panel on. So it's gonna make anything like that just 10 times harder in the future. So I always think, what might happen in the future and how the choices that we make while building these could affect things down the road. So that is a big issue with that. All right, the third maybe is like the foam board. So there's those pink foam boards. They're like big, 4x8 sheets of it. They have varying different thicknesses, anything from I think like 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch all the way up to like 3 inches thick. And that stuff actually is very much like the spray foam, and it has a very high R value. See, like this stuff. So you've probably seen this at Home Depot. But this stuff, it does have an R value of anywhere from, I think, like 6 to 8 per inch. So it is really good as an insulator. But the biggest problem with it is just kind of like the form factor of it, in that if you're, trying to install it, there's definitely some challenges there. I think I've seen people literally like cut it and form it and glue it all in, which kudos to you. That probably took a really, really long time. I would not really want to tackle that. It is doable. Again, some of your challenges are if you're not getting really close, if you're having bigger gaps. So that can definitely be, some problems. If you're having those air gaps, you're not going to get as good of overall insulation benefit there. So that is one of those that can be a challenge. More so, it can be beneficial like down into the floor. if you're planning on doing a lot of winter camping, all that, if you were to stack, just completely fill the underbelly of this with that stuff, I mean, you're looking at like R30 plus underneath there, which would be a lot. So if you want to do a bunch of winter camping, that could actually be a good option for the underbelly of one of these. But again, there are a lot of challenges to installing it in the walls. Again, like running wires becomes an issue because this has zero give to it. So you have to creatively find ways to run your wires and all of that. So again, it's kind of like how much time do you have, how much money do you have, how much patience do you have. Again, another downside of this is it is relatively expensive. I think for the 1 inch, like a 4x8 sheet is about, I think like $50 to $80, somewhere in that. That's obviously kind of a big range, but it's more than $50, but I think it's less than $100. Go look it up. And so it does get real expensive real quick if you're having to do, you know, 2 layers of it and stuff like that. So yeah. All right, and now the moment you've all been waiting for. We're gonna talk about the good, the ones that I recommend that we use on a regular basis in our builds. And we're gonna start with one that's, honestly, it's kind of funny. It's not entirely an insulator, and it's not entirely, well, it's not at all rated by R value. And that is lizard skin. And it is a thin mill ceramic based like rubberized spray coating that we use to spray the entire shell. And it is primarily designed to be a thermal break. So one of the big problems with aluminum is that it's very conductive of heat and energy, but it also it radiates. And so, you know, even if you have insulation in there, the aluminum is still like, it's transferring and radiating and conducting heat through it. And one of the big problems and the big mistakes that I see a lot of people make, and this is, if you take anything away from this video, let it be this moment right here, and that is that aluminum conducts heat. So these ribs are aluminum, you know, and they go from the shell, they come through, and then the other aluminum is attached to it. And if there's nothing, you know, separating them, isolating them, then that is conducting heat through those. So it doesn't matter what you put in, you put spray foam in here, whatever, you're still gonna have heat radiating, conducting through those ribs into the inside. You know, I've been into trailers that just uses regular aluminum in here, and you know, no matter how well they're insulated, you put your hand on it and it's hot. Like you can feel the heat conducting through those ribs. So there's 2 things we do to stop that. One of them is the lizard skin. So when we spray it on it, we coat everything. So it is coating the ribs, the ends of the ribs, and all of that. And I mean, we have a video that's linked that goes over that, so I won't get super into detail, but we tested a 15-degree temperature difference with a infrared thermometer from the surface of the shell in direct sunlight. So that's one of the huge benefits of it, is that it stops, it creates that thermal break that stops the heat from conducting through the aluminum. It also dramatically reduces the heat radiating off of it. So it blocks that, and so it causes it to radiate back the other direction, essentially. And one of the other huge benefits of it is that it seals the whole inside of the shell. So we all know that these things like to leak a lot. And so this lizard skin stuff, it just completely coats the inside, it seals it all up really well, and does a great job. And you may be thinking as well, isn't that a similar problem to, you know, the spray foam when it comes to panel replacements? And yes, it is. The big difference is that, in my opinion, it's a little easier. So if you take a panel off and then you get the new one, you could just brush on the lizard skin real quick and then pop it back in place. Or if you don't even do that, you still have the other insulation in there because we stack it with other insulation as well. So it's a little bit easier. Yes, that is still a minor problem, but the benefits so outweigh that I just don't even really worry about it. So lizard skin is super awesome. It is a little expensive. We do have it linked below. I don't personally sell it, offer it in my store, even though I get it at a wholesale price because just the cost of shipping is so high. Like, I can't compete with Amazon and some other places. So it is linked below. And with those links, a lot of them are affiliate links. That is a huge way that you can help and support this channel. If you really enjoy and benefit from what we're sharing, use those links. That gets us just a little bit to help produce these videos, and much gratitude for doing that. So the second good product, but the first true technical insulator that we're going to talk about in the good category is Rockwool. And that is this stuff right here. And I know it may kind of look like fiberglass somewhat. I mean, maybe not, I don't know. But what this stuff is it is actually basalt that is superheated and spun up into this kind of like cotton candy. And basalt is essentially magma, lava rock, which is pretty cool because you can ironically insulate your trailer with lava. Who would have thought? But we really like this stuff, and part of it is that it is incredibly easy to work with. It comes in these nicely shaped bats, and you can cut these just with a razor knife, or sometimes we'll use like a pole saw, depending. For a while there, I was getting them in 2-inch thicknesses, but I cannot seem to find anywhere that has them in stock in that size anymore, which is really annoying because that would just fit right in. You'd have to squish it just a little bit, but it was like perfect. So this is a 3.5-inch one, and so what we have to do is we use the pole saw and we like cut it in half lengthwise or widthwise or whatever you want to say. You can try to pull it apart. It does come apart relatively easy, but to get a cleaner cut and just better evenness and thickness, that's how we do it, is with the pole saw. But then you just cut it with a razor knife. You just measure or however and fit it up there. And then we use 3M Super 90 spray contact adhesive, and we just spray it on there, spray a little on that, and then boop, stick it in there, and it works great. So the installation of the insulation, there we go, is very simple with Rockwool. The other thing is that it does have a good R value. It comes in at about R4 per inch, and it's a little bit better than fiberglass. It's not as good as spray foam, but again, whenever you stack it with the lizard skin, like, it just works phenomenal because you have the conductive and the radiating thermal break going on with the lizard skin, and then you have the the insulator in there that is trapping all that heat. And so those two things combined produce a really good result. Now, if you don't want to do the lizard skin, it still works really great. Easy to install, easy to work with. Now, it's not as bad as fiberglass. I don't recommend just sitting there working with it and breathing it in. We still wear dust masks and all that stuff, but it's not as bad as fiberglass by any means. It does have a little bit more on the VOC side of things. You're gonna have some off-gassing. It's not terrible. I think the biggest thing is it's got some formaldehyde in it, which is not ideal. But again, everything has a trade-off. So if you really are concerned about that stuff, the sheep's wool is the way to go. There are some other things that we're gonna talk about at the very end, but they're kind of like the honorable mention or whatever you want to say. All right, so those are the products that we really love, that we recommend, and then obviously the stuff that we don't really recommend. So I hope that this was helpful. The big thing that I do also want to just stress is that this is kind of one of those things that people can really overthink. And again, there's just limitations with these trailers. We have the windows, we have the doors, it's aluminum. At the end of the day, it is a camper, and so there's always going to be trade-offs. But these are the things that work for us. I did want to just mention a few of the things that are some options. Again, I don't know every single insulator that's out there. If there's something that you have used and you really love, leave it in the comments. Or if you have a question that I didn't, if there's something that I didn't address, please ask me. I may or may not have the answer. Obviously, I don't know everything. by any means. But two of the honorable mentions are they have denim insulation, which is like old jeans and denim products that's chopped up and it's made into, I think it's bats. It may just be like a blow-in or like a loose fill. If it's loose fill, obviously it's not gonna work, but I'm pretty sure that they make it into bats too, because I've heard of people using it in Airstreams. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know. And then there's hemp insulation, which is actually really similar to Rockwool, and we looked into it at one point for a client, but I think it was a cost issue, that it was pretty expensive. But hemp would be a great option as an alternative to the sheep's wool, because it would be a lot easier to work with because it doesn't have the fibers that get all wound up and stuff, or the smell. It may have a different smell. I don't know, I've not worked with it, but that could be a good or bad thing depending on your hobbies and interests. Well, I hope this was informative, maybe a little bit funny, at least at the beginning, and that you guys got something out of it, you learned something. We're gonna have, just again, a lot more of these videos coming every week. We're gonna be releasing something, whether it's about Airstreams or Land Rovers or our trips and adventures as a family, but we hope that you guys will continue watching, share it. Again, if you have other people that you know that are working on them, we'd love for you to share, tell other people. We want to grow this channel, something that I'm just wanting to get back into and have enjoyed, and not being able to do it over the past few years has kind of been a bummer, so I'm wanting to just re-engage and get back into this. So we appreciate you all, and we'll see you next time.